In 1934, a book was published in Germany that claimed the Rothschild family controlled every government in the world. It was a lie, every word of it, but that lie was read by millions. It was used to justify persecution. It contributed to genocide, and versions of it are still circulating today on platforms that reach billions of people. Here is the problem. The people who spread these lies were wrong about almost everything, but they were not wrong about everything. Rothschilds did use their courier network to gather intelligence that governments never intended them to have. They did finance multiple sides of conflicts simultaneously. They did maintain financial relationships with government officials that a modern court would describe as corruption. The conspiracy theories are false, but they were built on a foundation of real events, real practices, and real power that has never been fully examined, because examining it clearly requires separating documented history from fabricated mythology, and most people find that separation very difficult to make. This documentary makes that separation: what is true, what is false, and why the lies became more powerful than the truth. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is the most influential document in history and one of the most thoroughly debunked fabrications ever published. It first appeared in Russia in 1903, presented as the minutes of a secret meeting of Jewish leaders planning world domination. It described a conspiracy to control governments, manipulate financial markets, corrupt culture, and ultimately enslaved non-Jewish populations under Jewish rule. Every word of it was invented. The document was created by the Russian Tsar's secret police as a tool for deflecting popular anger away from the government and toward the Jewish population. Large sections of it were plagiarized, almost word for word, from a French political satire published in 1864 that had nothing to do with Jews. The satire had targeted Napoleon III. The Ochrona simply replaced Napoleon III with the fictional Jewish elders and presented the result as a genuine document. The forgery was exposed almost immediately by serious journalists and scholars. The London Times published a detailed debunking in 1921. The evidence of fabrication was overwhelming and has never been seriously contested by anyone with scholarly credibility. None of this stopped it from spreading. The protocols were translated into dozens of languages. Henry Ford published them in his newspaper, The Dearborn Independent, reaching millions of American readers. Adolf Hitler cited them in Mein Kampf as evidence of Jewish conspiracy. The Nazi regime distributed them as educational material in German schools. The document that a Russian secret policeman invented in 1903 by plagiarizing a French political satire became the ideological foundation for the murder of 6 million people, and the Rothschilds were at the center of it. Not because the Rothschilds had done what the protocols claimed they had not, but because the Rothschild family was the most visible and powerful Jewish banking family in the world, and therefore the most convenient target for a conspiracy theory that needed a face. The protocols did not create Rothschild conspiracy theories. Rothschild conspiracy theories contributed to the protocols. The family's real power, their real practices, their real information advantages had been generating rumors and speculation for a century before the protocols appeared. The protocols simply systematized those rumors, stripped them of any remaining connection to documented reality, and presented the result as evidence of a global conspiracy. The specific lies about the Rothschilds fall into several categories. The first category is the lie of total control, the claim that the Rothschilds controlled all European governments, all central banks, all major media outlets, and all significant political decisions across the Western world. This is false. Demonstrably, thoroughly, completely false. The Rothschilds were enormously powerful. They influenced specific governments through their lending relationships. They had connections to political figures across Europe. They could, in certain circumstances, make it very difficult for a government to borrow money on favorable terms, which gave them leverage over governments that needed to borrow. But influence is not control. A bank that provides financing to a government has leverage over that government in specific circumstances related to that financing. It does not control the government's military decisions, its domestic policies, its judicial appointments, or the 1,000 other functions of a modern state that have nothing to do with bond issuances. The Rothschilds could not prevent the First World War, which destroyed the European financial architecture that was the foundation of their power. A family that controlled European governments would not have allowed the event that most damaged their interests to occur. The second category is the lie of perpetual conspiracy. The claim that the Rothschild family has maintained a continuous, coordinated, secret plan for world domination across 2 centuries and multiple generations. This requires believing that a family of human beings, subject to the normal disagreements, jealousies, failures of communication, and diverging interests that characterize all human families, has maintained perfect coordination on a secret agenda across 200 years without a single significant leak, defection, or internal conflict becoming public. The documented history of the Rothschild family shows a family with significant internal disagreements, branches that pursued different interests, individual members who made poor decisions, marriages that created tensions, and generational conflicts that affected business decisions. This is what families look like. Coordinated conspiracies spanning centuries do not look like this. The third category is the lie of supernatural power. The claim that the Rothschilds possess abilities or access that transcend normal human limitations, that they can predict the future, that they can manipulate markets with absolute precision, that they are immune to the normal forces that affect other human institutions. The documented history shows a family that made significant mistakes, that bet on the wrong side of historical developments, that lost enormous wealth to wars, nationalization, and the simple mathematics of dividing a fortune among too many heirs. A family with supernatural power would not have lost the Vienna house to the Nazis, would not have had the Paris house occupied and looted, would not have sold Rockefeller Center to maintain liquidity. These things happened to the Rothschilds because they are human beings, operating within historical forces they did not control, not supernatural entities standing outside those forces. Now, what is true? The Rothschilds built and maintained an information advantage over their competitors that was more extensive, more systematic, and more deliberately constructed than any other private institution in 19th century Europe. This is documented. It is not disputed by serious historians. The courier network was real. The speed advantage was real. The use of that speed advantage to make financial decisions ahead of the market was real. Whether this crosses into territory that a modern legal system would describe as market manipulation is a question that historians debate. What is not debatable is that the family consistently knew things faster than anyone else and consistently profited from that knowledge in ways that competitors could not replicate. The Rothschilds did finance multiple sides in multiple conflicts. This is also documented. The family's defenders argue that this was standard practice for major banking houses, and that the Rothschilds were not unique in maintaining financial relationships across conflict lines. This argument has merit. It is also incomplete. The Rothschilds were not simply maintaining passive relationships, they were actively using their cross-conflict access to gather intelligence that informed their financial decisions in ways that went beyond what their role as bankers required or justified. That the Rothschilds did maintain financial relationships with government officials that created conflicts of interest that a modern regulatory framework would not permit. This is documented in the records of the parliamentary investigations of the 1840s and in the private correspondence of several government officials whose papers had become available to researchers. Whether these relationships constituted bribery in the legal sense that applied at the time is complicated by the fact that the legal frameworks governing such relationships were far less developed in the 19th century than they are today. What is documented is that the relationships existed, that they benefited both parties, and that they gave the Rothschilds access to information and favorable treatment that their competitors did not receive. These are the true things. They are serious. They deserve examination. They are also completely different in kind from controlling governments, engineering genocides, and secretly ruling the world. The question that is most interesting is not whether the conspiracy theories are false. They are false. That is established. The interesting question is why they became so powerful and why they have proven so impossible to kill. Part of the answer is structural. Conspiracy theories about financial power fill a genuine psychological need. Economic inequality is real. The feeling that powerful institutions operate in ways that are opaque to ordinary people is accurate. The sense that rules apply differently to those with sufficient resources is not paranoid. It is often correct.